More than 10 years have passed since that autumn afternoon, yet the memory remains a vivid scar etched into my soul, as if the clock stopped that day and left me suspended in its grip. Our small town, a cluster of weathered homes cradled against the vast, untamed forest, buzzed with Tyler's name for a fleeting season. He was 11, a boy with a grin that lit up rooms, lost to the woods that bordered our lives. The local news, with its grainy footage and speculative anchors, tossed out theories. Wild animals dragging him into the underbrush, a misstep sending him tumbling into a hidden ravine, or the cold seeping into his bones until he faded away. For a while, the story held the town's attention, a grim fascination that fueled late-night conversations and speculative glances. But as weeks turned to months, the interest waned, replaced by the mundane rhythm of daily life. The police, their uniforms creased with exhaustion, closed the case with a perfunctory conclusion. A tragic accident, a file stamped and shelved. My parents, their faces etched with a hope that refused to die, clung to the possibility of Tyler's return, whispering prayers into the night. Eventually, worn down by time and silence, they accepted the lie that he was gone forever. They never knew the truth, a truth I buried deep, a secret I guarded with the ferocity of a wounded animal. Why did I keep silent? The answer is a tangle of fear and shame, a knot that tightened with each passing year. What I saw that day in the woods was not just bizarre. It was a violation of the natural order, a sight so alien that speaking it aloud felt like inviting madness into my life. I imagined the townsfolk's pity turning to suspicion, their condolences morphing into whispers of insanity or, worse, accusations of complicity. Therapy became my refuge and my prison, a weekly ritual where I nodded through the counselor's gentle probes, agreeing with their theories of grief and denial while a scream roared inside me, clawing to escape. Friends offered awkward hugs, neighbors muttered platitudes about moving on, and all the while, I carried the weight of a truth too heavy to share. The burden grew, a stone lodged in my chest, its edges sharpening with every anniversary, every unanswered question. Now, as the golden afternoon light of June 18, 2025, filters through my window, I can no longer bear it alone. This account is my liberation, a confession cast into the void, a cautionary tale for those who dare to tread where the wild things lurk, or perhaps evidence of a mind fractured by grief. Believe me or dismiss me, but I must unburden myself. The choice to speak comes not from a surge of bravery but from a bone-deep weariness. A decade of locking the truth away has hollowed me out, leaving a shell that replays that day in relentless loops. Tyler's laugh, the crunch of leaves, the creature's scream. I write this not to seek validation or absolution but to set the story free, to let it drift into the digital ether where it might find a kindred spirit. If it reaches someone who has felt the brush of the unnatural against their own life, who has glimpsed a shadow that shouldn't be, then the risk is justified. The forest claimed Tyler, and what emerged in his place was a mockery of my brother, a doppelganger born of nightmare. This is the unvarnished truth, traced in the veins of every leaf, whispered in the silence of every tree, a story I must tell before it consumes me entirely. The day began with the innocence of a school assignment, a task as mundane as collecting leaves, maple, oak, birch, to present to our science teacher. It was a crisp autumn afternoon, the kind where the air carries a hint of frost and the forest beckons with the promise of adventure. Tyler and I, brothers bound by shared secrets and sibling rivalry, ventured into the woods that edged our town, a green cathedral we'd explored since we could walk. The forest was our playground, its paths worn smooth by countless games of tag and hide and seek, its trees familiar sentinels marking the boundaries of our world. Tyler, 11 and brimming with energy, clutched a paper bag, his small hands eager to fill it with nature's treasures. His eyes sparkled as he held up a maple leaf, its edges a vivid crimson, the veins a delicate map of life. "Hey, this one's cool, right?" he asked, his voice a bright melody that danced through the trees. I grinned, tossing a nod his way. "Yeah, great find. Put it in your bag. We still need an oak and a birch." The hunt began, a half-hour immersion in the forest's embrace, the ground a tapestry of leaves, some brittle and brown, relics of seasons past, others freshly fallen, their colors a riot of red and gold. The crunch under our boots was a rhythmic song, the air thick with the earthy scent of decay mingling with the sharp tang of pine, a symphony of nature's cycle that we moved to with carefree ease. Tyler's focus was a thing of beauty, his gaze sweeping the forest floor with the precision of a scientist, seeking the perfect specimen in every leaf. I admired his dedication, a stark contrast to my own relaxed approach. Where he hunted with intent, I wandered with curiosity. Together, we were a balanced pair, our bags swelling with the day's haul, a collection that promised an A on our project. But as we worked, a subtle shift crept into the air, an unease that prickled the back of my neck. The woods felt different, altered in a way I couldn't name. The atmosphere grew heavy, a tangible weight pressing against my chest, as if the forest itself held its breath. The usual soundtrack, birdsong, the rustle of squirrels, the distant call of a deer, was absent, replaced by an oppressive silence that seemed to listen. Even the wind, a constant companion in these trees, stilled, its absence a void that amplified every step. I shook it off, attributing it to the imagination of a 13-year-old mind. But the sensation lingered, a shadow that refused to fade. Then came the moment that shattered our rhythm. Tyler gasped, his voice cutting through the quiet like a blade. "Whoa, look at that pond." Before I could respond, he was gone. A streak of motion toward a glimmering patch of water that caught the sunlight in a way that seemed almost otherworldly. The pond's surface shimmered, a mirror of liquid light that danced with reflections, casting an ethereal glow across the surrounding trees. "Hey, wait up!" I shouted, my boots kicking up dirt and small stones as I broke into a run, the urgency in my voice lost to the distance between us. But Tyler vanished, swallowed by the dense foliage, his absence a sudden, gaping hole in the fabric of our day. My calls, "Tyler, Tyler," bounced back from the tree trunks and tangled branches, unanswered, the forest absorbing my pleas into its depths. The silence deepened, the rustling leaves now a susurrus of secrets I couldn't unravel. A chill raced down my spine, the air thickening with a tension that felt alive, sentient. As I stumbled toward the pond's edge, my heart pounding with a fear I couldn't yet name. Panic seized me as I reached the pond, its dark surface a stark contrast to the shimmering illusion that had drawn Tyler away. The water lay still, an unbroken mirror that offered no clue, no ripple to suggest his presence. "Tyler, where are you?" My voice cracked, dissipating into the uncanny quiet that enveloped the woods, a silence so profound it pressed against my eardrums like a physical force. Logic took over, guiding my search with a desperate clarity. Behind the gnarled oaks, through the prickly bushes, my hands pushing aside branches that snagged at my clothes. Each spot was empty, a void where Tyler should have been. My eyes darted to the pond again, dread pooling in my stomach like cold lead. Could he have fallen in? Leaning over the edge, I peered into the depths, half expecting to see his face staring back, pale and distorted beneath the surface. But the water remained a black void, undisturbed, its stillness a mocking refusal to yield answers. I was no longer just a brother searching for a lost sibling. I was a boy ensnared in a nightmare that spiraled beyond comprehension, the weight of the situation crashing down with every fruitless step. My hands, now streaked with dirt from scrambling across the forest floor, clutched the forgotten paper bag, its contents. A handful of leaves, a cruel reminder of the innocence we'd lost. The forest seemed to tighten around me, the trees leaning inward as if to witness my desperation, their bark etched with the scars of time. The air grew heavy, saturated with an unseen presence that brushed against my skin like a cold breath. My worry transformed into a gut-wrenching dread, a visceral pull that rooted me to the spot, torn between two paths. One part of me screamed to run back, to fetch help from the adults or the authorities, to bring lights and voices to pierce this suffocating solitude. The other held me fast, conjuring images of Tyler lying hurt, his small body broken beneath a fallen branch or trapped in some unseen crevice, his cries unheard. The thought was unbearable, a dagger twisting in my chest, driving me to press on. I shouted his name again, the sound swallowed by the silence, a futile echo that mocked my efforts. Time stretched, an eternity of searching, despair seeping into my bones with every unanswered call, every empty thicket. Just as hopelessness threatened to overwhelm me, a figure emerged in the distance, a silhouette against the dappled light filtering through the canopy. It was Tyler, standing beside an abandoned cabin, its wood weathered to a gray husk, windows shattered like the hollow eyes of a skull. Relief should have surged through me, a flood to wash away the tension that had coiled tight in my muscles. Instead, a new unease took root, a whisper of wrongness that tightened my grip on the bag. Tyler, what on earth are you doing here? I've been searching everywhere. I ran toward him, my breath ragged, the forest floor a blur beneath my feet. He turned, a smile stretching across his face, too wide, too perfect. Sorry, I got sidetracked. Isn't this cabin awesome? The words should have soothed me, a return to normalcy, but they rang hollow, a note off-key in the symphony of our day. His grin felt like a mask, a facade hiding something I couldn't yet name, and the dread that had ebbed now surged back, darker and more insistent. We began the walk back, retracing our steps through the forest, the sun dipping lower in the sky, its golden rays casting long shadows that stretched like dark fingers across the leaf-strewn ground. Tyler bent to pick more leaves, his enthusiasm seemingly intact, holding up one with a peculiar pattern of spots that danced across its surface. Look at this one. Kind of looks like it has freckles, doesn't it? He said, his voice bright but edged with an unfamiliar cadence. I forced a smile, the effort straining my face. Yeah, cool find. But something was amiss, a subtle discord in the way he held the leaf, tentative, as if he'd never cradled one before, his fingers awkward against its texture. I dismissed it as the exhaustion of the search, a trick of my overtaxed mind. Yet the unease grew, a shadow lengthening with each step. He took the lead, pointing out trees with a practiced air, oak, maple, birch, each identification preceded by a fractional pause, a hesitation that flickered like a glitch in a film reel. The woods felt familiar, the paths etched into my memory, yet they were alien, a mirror image skewed just enough to unsettle. The trees stood too straight, the leaves too still, the air too thick with an unseen weight. We have to get back home, I said, my voice tinged with an urgency I hoped he'd sense. Mom and Dad will be freaking out, not to mention Max. Tyler nodded, a gesture that should have reassured me. But then came the slip that stopped my heart. Yeah, I bet Susan and Robert are worried. The names hit like a physical blow. No one called our parents by their middle names. It had always been Mom and Dad, a sacred title in our family lexicon. You mean Mom and Dad, right? I asked, giving him a chance to correct, my tone a lifeline thrown into the growing chasm between us. His laugh was forced, a brittle sound that cracked the air. Yeah, of course, Mom and Dad. But the damage was done. Suspicion coiling in my gut like a serpent, the dread I'd suppressed surging back with a vengeance. The silence between us grew oppressive, the forest muting itself as if complicit in the deception. The usual rustle of leaves, the distant call of a bird, all vanished, leaving a void that amplified every step, every breath. Then he spoke again, a question that shattered my pretense of calm. So how's Bella? My head jerked toward him, disbelief sharpening my voice. Our dog's name is Max, I said, the words a challenge flung into the stillness. He faltered, his eyes avoiding mine, a flicker of uncertainty crossing his face. Right, Max, I meant Max, he corrected. But the lack of conviction was a siren blaring in my mind. This wasn't Tyler. The realization struck like lightning, illuminating the truth I'd refused to see. My hand slipped into my pocket, fingers closing around the pocket knife I always carried on hikes, its cold metal a stark contrast to the heat rising in my chest. I needed a plan, a test to confirm the unthinkable. Remember the summer we built that treehouse with Dad? I asked, my gaze locked on his reaction, searching for the brother I knew. He nodded, a smile playing on his lips. Yeah, that was fun. The real test came next, a memory only Tyler, Dad, and I shared. What did we find in the old chest in the attic that we used for the trapdoor? The answer was etched in our history. Dad's baseball card collection. A treasure we'd sworn to keep secret. A bond forged in laughter and dust. His hesitation was a crack in the mask. A split second where his eyes darted, searching for an answer. We found some old books and toys, he said, the words tumbling out too quickly. Wrong. The chill that raced down my spine was ice, freezing the blood in my veins. This wasn't Tyler. The creature beside me had taken my brother, and I couldn't let it leave the woods, a threat cloaked in his familiar form. We're almost there, it said, pointing to the thinning trees ahead, its voice a mimicry of Tyler's warmth. My fingers tightened on the knife, the weight a grim promise. I had to act, and the forest, with its silent complicity, seemed to wait for my decision. Who are you? I demanded, my voice low and firm, the pocket knife's blade now bared, glinting in the fading light. The imposter hesitated, its eyes shifting like a cornered animal, a flicker of something inhuman passing through them. What are you talking about? It stammered, the words shaky, unconvincing, a poor imitation of Tyler's confidence. Answer me. I pressed, my voice rising, a challenge that rang out through the surrounding woods, shattering the silence. You're not Tyler. Who or what are you? The air thickened, the forest holding its breath as the creature's facade wavered. Then it lunged, a blur of motion faster than I'd anticipated, its fingers grazing the fabric of my shirt as I sidestepped, adrenaline surging. I swung the knife in a defensive arc, the blade whistling through the air, but it ducked with unnatural agility, tackling me to the ground with a force that drove the breath from my lungs. We tumbled, the knife skittering across the leaf-strewn floor, landing just out of reach. Desperation clawed at me as its hands closed around my neck, squeezing with a strength that defied its human form, its grip a vice of cold, unyielding power. My vision blurred, black creeping in at the edges, the world narrowing to the pressure on my throat, until a surge of adrenaline fueled a wild punch to its face. The impact jolted its grip loose, a momentary reprieve as it howled, a sound more animal than human, its features twisting in pain. I scrambled to my feet, lunging for the knife, my fingers closing around the handle as the creature recovered, back on its feet with a snarl that reverberated through the trees. It lunged again, a blur of motion, but I was ready this time, sidestepping with a dancer's grace born of desperation. With a quick upward thrust, I plunged the knife into its side, the blade sinking deep. A scream tore from its throat, a horrible, guttural sound that echoed through the forest, searing itself into my memory with a permanence I knew I'd never escape. Its body convulsed, the skin rippling as if pushed from within by countless invisible hands, a grotesque dance of transformation. Colors shifted rapidly, red fading to gray, black bleeding into nothingness, its face distorting in a nightmare of change. The eyes enlarged, becoming inky voids that swallowed light, then sank into a pulsating mass of gray flesh, the features that mimicked Tyler melting away. Limbs twisted, bones cracking with sickening pops, fingers merging and splitting into long, claw-like appendages that scraped the earth. The clothing it wore, Tyler's jacket, his jeans, tore apart, absorbed into its form like water into sand, revealing the true horror beneath. What stood before me was no longer human, a creature unlike any I'd ever seen or imagined. Its body was a writhing mass of gray flesh, speckled with darker spots that moved of their own accord, a living tapestry of corruption. Multiple appendages extended from its core, some ending in sharp, talon-like structures that glinted with menace. The eyes, now numerous black orbs, absorbed all light, giving nothing back, their gaze a void that pulled at my sanity. It collapsed to the ground, its form losing cohesion, becoming a slightly less defined heap of pulsating matter. A final low gurgle escaped its maw, a death rattle that faded into silence, the forest exhaling as if expelling a poison from its midst. I stared at the lifeless body, the implications of what I'd done crashing down like a tidal wave. The weight of my actions, a burden I'd carry forever. I couldn't take it with me. The thought of explaining this abomination to the police or my parents, a nightmare I couldn't face. Nor could I leave it for others to find. A discovery that would unravel my lie and expose the truth. In a state of near automation, I began to gather leaves and branches, piling them over the corpse with trembling hands. The task a futile attempt to conceal the horror. My fingers shook as I worked, the weight of my actions and their consequences settling into my bones. A lie formed in my mind. Tyler had gotten lost. I'd searched but failed to find him. A story I'd rehearse until it felt true. It was a distasteful, awful act to consider, but the alternative, a truth no one was prepared to hear, was unthinkable. I cleaned the knife later, its blade stained with the creature's remains, wrapping it in an old cloth and burying it in a box of discarded mementos. A symbolic release I hoped would ease the guilt. Returning home, I braced myself for the storm to come, stepping through the front door to face my parents' anguish, spinning the tale as police and volunteers swarmed the woods in vain. They found the body eventually, mistaking it for a deer, a relief that mingled with the sorrow of knowing Tyler was truly gone, and I was the keeper of his end. Weeks bled into months. The search for Tyler called off with a red circle on the calendar. A heartbreaking day when my parents learned the official truth. The atmosphere in our home grew heavier, a pall of grief that thickened with every silent meal, every unanswered prayer. "We have to accept that he might not come back," Dad said, his voice thick with unshed tears, his hands trembling as he gripped the kitchen table. Mom shook her head, her denial a shield against the pain. "I can't. I won't." I listened, an intruder in their grief, my pain tinged with a guilt they couldn't comprehend, a secret that gnawed at my insides. The authorities clung to their narrative. Tyler got lost, died of exposure, a notion my parents bitterly rejected, their refusal a mirror to the truth I couldn't share. Deep inside, I wanted to shout that they were right, that Tyler hadn't just wandered off, that something horrific, something unnatural had taken him. But the words stuck in my throat, a lump of fear and shame. They'd think me insane or worse, responsible for his loss. "I'm going for a drive," I announced suddenly, needing to escape the oppressive sorrow that filled our home. Dad's eyes searched mine, a flicker of concern. "Are you okay to drive?" "I'm fine," I lied, the words tasting of ash as I fled to the car. The drive was aimless, turns random, yet somehow I found myself at the forest's entrance, the same woods that had claimed Tyler. My hands gripped the steering wheel tightly, the leather creaking under the pressure as I stared into the dark expanse of trees, half expecting that creature to saunter out, its black orbs gleaming. But it was just woods now, ordinary in the daylight, a facade hiding the horror within. I drove back home, avoiding my parents' gaze, retreating to my room where I unearthed the pocket knife, its blade still bearing faint traces of that day. Looking at it, so ordinary in its simplicity, it was hard to believe the weight it carried. A tool of survival, a witness to my sin. I wrapped it in an old cloth, tucking it into a box of discarded mementos, and threw it in the trash, a symbolic letting go that did little to ease the ache. Days turned to weeks. Friends reached out with texts. "You okay, man? You've been really distant." But I kept to myself, replying with curt assurances. "Yeah, just going through some stuff. Thanks for checking in." My parents, seeing my withdrawal, suggested therapy again. "You should see a therapist," Mom said one night at dinner, her voice gentle but firm. I shook my head. "I'm fine, really. I'm just dealing with it in my own way." "What way is that?" Dad asked, his eyes searching for a sign of healing I couldn't offer. "I'm writing," I lied, the words a shield, but the truth wasn't on paper. It was locked away, festering in the quiet moments, haunting me with what-ifs and could-haves. Years passed, and I moved to a city, a concrete jungle where the line between natural and supernatural felt less porous, a refuge from the woods that had betrayed me. My parents aged, their faces lined with the wear of a life burdened by tragedy, their hope a dim flicker that refused to die. I called, I visited, but a wall stood between us, built from the bricks of a lie too vast to dismantle. Why share now? The secret has corroded me, a poison eating at my core, a weight I can't shoulder alone. This confession is for me, a release of the real, a hope that others might carry a piece of this darkness. Can you face this truth, or does it stir a fear too deep to name? A shadow that lingers in your own past?